The little girl stabbed on her walk home, the forgotten murder of Wendy Wolin. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. The streets of Newark were busy that afternoon. Children laughed. Cars honked. The city buzzed with its usual rhythm. But for one little girl, the day would end in silence. Her name was Wendy Wolin. She was only 7 years old. Her walk home should have taken just minutes, but she never made it. It was January 1966. The air was cold but not unbearable. Kids left school bundled in coats, their breath visible in the crisp winter air. Wendy was one of them. She lived just blocks away. It wasn't a dangerous neighborhood. Parents often felt safe letting their children walk home. That trust would soon be shattered forever. Neighbors remembered her as a cheerful child. Quiet, polite, always smiling. She loved to play jump rope with friends. She loved dolls. She loved life. That afternoon, she started her short journey home. The same route she always took. Familiar sidewalks. Familiar faces. It should have been safe. Then it happened. Witnesses would later say they saw a man. He came out of nowhere. No warning. No words. He held something in his hand. A knife. In broad daylight, in front of stunned bystanders, he struck. Fast. Savage. Unthinkable. The man stabbed Wendy. Again. And again. Her small frame crumpled on the pavement. Her cries filled the air. The neighborhood froze. Some screamed. Some ran. Some stood paralyzed in shock. This wasn't a dark alley. This wasn't the dead of night. It was the middle of the day. Children watched. Parents watched. Everyone was powerless. The attacker didn't linger. He didn't speak. He finished his brutal act and fled. Gone within seconds. Wendy lay bleeding on the ground, her short life slipping away. Panic rippled through the street. A woman rushed to her side. Others shouted for help. Calls were made to police, to ambulances, to anyone who could save her. But it was too late. The damage was catastrophic. The knife wounds were deep, fatal. 7 years old. Gone in an instant. The witnesses were hysterical. How could this happen here? How could this happen in daylight? And why? News spread fast. Parents ran into the streets. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers looked around in fury. No one felt safe. If a little girl could be murdered on a busy street, then no child was safe. No family was safe. The police arrived quickly. They tried to calm the chaos. They marked the crime scene. They spoke to witnesses. But the killer was already gone. He had vanished into the city, blending into Newark like a ghost. All that remained was horror and blood on the pavement. Who could do this? Who would do this? Detectives had no clear answers. Some believed it had to be random. A drifter, a stranger passing through, someone unhinged. Others whispered darker theories. Could it have been personal? Did someone know Wendy? Did someone target her? But those who saw the attack described it as random. A man they didn't recognize. Someone who struck and disappeared. The idea terrified everyone even more, because it meant the killer could still be out there. Waiting. Watching. That night, Newark wasn't the same. Families locked their doors. Children cried themselves to sleep. Parents stayed awake, listening for sounds in the dark. Every shadow felt threatening. Every stranger looked suspicious. The killer hadn't been caught, and that meant he could strike again. The city, already struggling with crime, now had a new nightmare. A faceless predator. A murderer who chose the most vulnerable victim of all. A 7-year-old girl. Those who had seen the murder would never forget it. They replayed it in their minds, over and over. The man's face, the knife, the blood, the screams. But fear clouded memories. Details blurred. Was he tall? Was he short? What color was his coat? Was his hair dark? Light? Curly? Straight? Some said one thing. Others said another. Police tried to piece it together. But the description of the suspect was vague. Too vague. The media descended on the story. Headlines screamed across newspapers. Child slain in street. Girl stabbed in front of crowd. The brutality shocked even seasoned reporters. How could this happen? Why wasn't anyone able to stop it? Editorials condemned the state of the city. Some blamed rising crime. Some blamed poverty. Others blamed a lack of police presence. But none of it mattered to Wendy's grieving family. They had lost their daughter, their little girl. Their life was shattered. The days after the murder were heavy with sorrow. Wendy's funeral drew crowds, neighbors, friends, strangers who never knew her but were moved by her tragedy. The tiny casket broke hearts. Her parents wept. The community wept. It was a scene of unbearable pain. Priests spoke of innocence lost, of evil in the world, of a wound that would never heal. The murder of Wendy Wolin had become more than just a crime. It was a symbol, a reminder of how fragile life was, and how darkness could strike without warning. Detectives worked day and night. They canvassed the neighborhood. They interviewed every witness. They checked criminal records. But leads dried up quickly. The killer had disappeared into thin air. No fingerprints. No murder weapon. No clear suspect. What they had was chaos. What they had was fear. And for the Wolin family, what they had was a permanent nightmare. Why Wendy? Why that day? Why in public? The crime made no sense. It wasn't a robbery. Nothing was stolen. It wasn't sexual assault. There were no signs. It was just violence. Pure, senseless violence. And that was the scariest part of all. Because how do you stop something you don't understand? The murder of Wendy Wolin cast a shadow over Newark. Parents became stricter. Children lost freedom. The streets weren't safe anymore. It marked the city. It scarred the community. And it raised a haunting truth. Even in daylight, even among crowds, you are never truly safe. The police promised justice. The city demanded answers. The family begged for closure. But as the weeks passed, as the months passed, as the years passed, the case of Wendy Wolin remained unsolved. The killer had vanished. And the little girl's screams still echoed in the minds of those who had been there. Who was he? Why did he do it? And could he have killed again? The answers were out there, somewhere. But for now, they were buried in shadows. The city didn't sleep after Wendy Wolin's murder. How could it? The brutal stabbing of a 7-year-old girl had left Newark paralyzed with fear. The crime was shocking not just because of its savagery. It was shocking because of where it happened. Broad daylight, in front of witnesses, on a busy street. If a killer could strike there, he could strike anywhere. If he could kill a child in public, then no one was safe. Parents clutched their children tighter. Mothers no longer let their kids walk to school alone. Fathers escorted their daughters to playgrounds. The freedom children once enjoyed vanished overnight. The city felt poisoned. Every corner seemed dangerous. Every stranger looked suspicious. People whispered about the killer. They whispered in kitchens, in corner stores, on buses, church pews. Who was he? Where was he? Would he kill again? The unanswered questions became heavier by the day. Detectives felt the weight of the entire city on their shoulders. The press demanded answers. The family begged for justice. The public demanded safety. But the investigation stalled almost immediately. The killer had left nothing behind. No weapon, no fingerprints, no clear description. Witnesses were shaken. Some described a man in a dark coat. Others remembered light clothing. Some said tall. Others swore he was short. Memories blurred under trauma. It was chaos, and chaos makes bad evidence. Police searched hospitals. They looked for anyone who might have been injured that day. They checked parole lists. They checked local psychiatric facilities. They checked drifters, ex-cons, known violent offenders. But no one fit perfectly. The killer seemed to have come out of nowhere, and then vanished. That was the most terrifying part. Because if he could vanish once, he could do it again. Children refused to walk alone. Parents created walking groups. Some even pulled their kids out of school. The streets that once echoed with laughter now carried silence. Shops closed earlier. People avoided going out at night. But even daylight didn't feel safe anymore. The attack had rewritten the rules. Crime was no longer something that happened in the shadows. Could happen anywhere, to anyone. Newspapers devoured the story. Headlines screamed from every corner. Monster stalks Newark. Who killed little Wendy? Child slaughtered in public. Television anchors spoke with urgency. Radio stations carried updates every hour. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted the monster caught. But no answers came. Reporters camped outside the Wolin family home. They hunted neighbors for quotes. They painted Newark as a city under siege. And for once, the sensationalism wasn't far from the truth. Inside the Wolin household, grief consumed every moment. Her parents were broken. Their little girl was gone forever. They replayed her last day in their minds. Her walk to school, her walk home, her final moments. The pain was relentless. The house felt empty. Her toys sat untouched. Her room frozen in time. How do you explain to yourself that your child left for school and never came back? How do you keep living? Their sorrow became public. Their tears became headlines. And their grief became part of Newark's collective pain. With no answers, rumors filled the void. Some believed it was a madman. Others whispered about gangs. Some suggested it was a neighbor hiding in plain sight. Theories grew wild. Could it have been someone targeting the Wolins specifically? Or was Wendy just a random victim of pure evil? The randomness frightened people the most. Because if it was random, then anyone could be next. Those who had seen the attack couldn't escape it. Nightmares haunted them. Flashbacks followed them. The image of a small girl falling to the pavement replayed endlessly. Some moved away. Some stopped talking about it entirely. Some never recovered. Trauma spread like infection. It wasn't just Wendy's family who suffered. The entire community carried the wound. Despite having no strong leads, police made public promises. They swore justice would come. They swore the killer would be caught. They swore Newark would be safe again. But promises don't heal wounds. And promises don't stop killers. Every day the case went unsolved. The fear grew. And so did anger. Protests began forming. Groups of parents gathered outside City Hall. They demanded more patrols. They demanded faster answers. Some accused the police of incompetence. Others accused city leaders of neglect. Tension boiled. The Wolin case had become more than a murder. It had become a symbol of Newark's struggle. Crime, fear, distrust in authority. It all came to the surface. Within weeks, Newark changed forever. Children no longer played freely. Strangers were no longer trusted. The streets no longer felt like home. The sense of community broke down. People stopped talking to each other. They locked doors. They locked windows. They locked themselves away. The killer hadn't just taken Wendy's life. He had stolen the city's innocence. Months passed. The killer was still out there. Police files grew thicker, but answers remained thin. Detectives grew frustrated. The public grew restless. The Wolin family grew hopeless. Every lead went cold. Every suspect was cleared. Every theory collapsed. The shadow of the killer still loomed. Always there. Always watching. Always unpunished. What if someone had stopped him? What if the police had caught him that day? What if Wendy had taken a different street? Questions with no answers haunted everyone. And with each day that passed, the case grew colder. But the fear remained hot. The city demanded justice. The family begged for closure. Detectives searched for truth. But the truth slipped further away. The murder of Wendy Wolin was no longer just a tragedy. It was a mystery, one that held Newark in its grip. Who was the man with the knife? Why did he choose that day? Why did he choose Wendy? And most terrifying of all, would he kill again? For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The man who killed Wendy Wolin vanished into thin air. One moment he was there with a knife, the next gone. It didn't make sense. Not to the witnesses, not to the police, not to the city. How could a killer escape in broad daylight? How could he disappear on a crowded street? The question haunted everyone. Witnesses swore they saw him flee. He darted into an alley. He blended into the crowd. And then nothing. No one saw where he went. No one followed. It was as if the city had swallowed him whole. Police scoured the area. They went door to door. They searched basements. They searched rooftops. They even dragged nearby rivers. Still nothing. It was like chasing smoke. Police needed a description. They needed a face. But witnesses gave chaos instead of clarity. He was tall, one said. No, short. Another argued. Light coat. Dark coat. Clean shaven. Beard. The killer's image twisted with every retelling. He became both everything and nothing. Detectives pinned sketches on walls. None matched. None felt certain. The face of the killer blurred like a ghost. Soon, people called him the Ghost. The Ghost of Newark. A man who appeared, killed, then disappeared. Whispers spread fast. Some said he was a drifter. Some said he was a neighbor hiding in plain sight. Some said he was never even real. But Wendy's body told the truth. The ghost was real, and he was still out there. The police grabbed anyone who looked suspicious. A drifter seen near the park. A man with a criminal past. A stranger who lingered too long around schools. Each one was interrogated. Each one cleared. No one matched the chaos of descriptions. No one fit the ghost. Detectives grew frustrated. The case grew colder. The killer grew bolder. Because the longer he went free, the safer he became. What about the weapon? The blade that ended Wendy's life? It was never found. Police searched garbage cans, sewers, vacant lots. Nothing. The killer had hidden it well. Or maybe he had carried it with him, tucked away, waiting for another chance. That thought terrified parents most. Because a man with a knife could strike again at any moment. Weeks turned into months. The city didn't heal. It only grew darker. Parents escorted kids everywhere. Playgrounds stayed empty. Stores stayed quiet. Church sermons turned grim. Even police officers admitted the fear got to them. Some confessed they checked over their shoulder constantly. The ghost wasn't just haunting civilians. He haunted the force too. Psychiatrists weighed in. They said the killer might have been insane. Paranoid schizophrenic. A violent psychotic. Someone detached from reality. Others argued it was controlled, calculated, planned, because only someone cunning could escape like that. Only someone careful could vanish so cleanly. Was he a madman or a mastermind? No one knew, but the question made the fear worse. Behind closed doors, detectives admitted they had blown it. The crime scene was chaotic. Crowds rushed in, evidence trampled, details missed. Witnesses weren't secured fast enough. Their stories grew tangled, their memories polluted by rumors. By the time order returned, the case was already broken. And in homicide, a broken beginning often means no ending. The Wolins demanded answers. They begged detectives. They pleaded with city leaders. But nothing came. No arrests, no trials, no justice. Their anger turned into despair. Their grief deepened, and their trust in the system collapsed. Parents' worst nightmare had come true, and then the system failed them too. What shocked everyone most was the silence. No letters, no taunts, no threats. The ghost never bragged. He never teased. He simply disappeared. Serial killers often craved attention. They wanted credit. They wanted fear. But this one, nothing. It was as if killing Wendy was enough. One murder, one child, one city destroyed, then silence. That silence felt even more terrifying, because silence meant control. One detective, a veteran named Frank, couldn't let it go. He studied the files night after night. He walked the crime scene over and over. He interviewed the same witnesses again and again. But answers never came. The case consumed him. It broke his marriage. It ruined his sleep. Frank believed the ghost still lived in Newark. He believed the killer walked the same streets as everyone else. Shopping, working, blending in. That idea made his skin crawl. As months passed, the public's attention faded. New crimes replaced old headlines. New tragedies took the spotlight. Wendy's murder slipped from front pages to back. From nightly news to occasional mention. From outrage to faint memory. But the family never forgot. And the detectives never forgave themselves. For them, the ghost was always present. Always taunting. Always there. A year later, a rumor surfaced. A man was seen in another city. He resembled one of the police sketches. He had a violent record. He carried a knife. Detectives raced to check it out. They tracked him. They questioned him. But once again, nothing. He wasn't the ghost. The trail went cold again. Over time, the ghost became more legend than man. Parents told stories to scare kids into staying close. Children whispered his name at night. Teenagers dared each other to walk alone past the crime scene. The ghost became folklore. But behind the myth was a real killer. A man who had stabbed a child and vanished. A man who was never caught. Years passed. Newark moved forward. But scars remained. Parents raised children under the shadow of Wendy's murder. Detectives retired with guilt in their files. The Wolin family carried grief forever. And the ghost? He carried silence. The silence of freedom. The silence of an unsolved crime. Who was he? Why did he kill Wendy? Why that day? Why that street? Why her? Was he still alive? Did he kill again? Or did he vanish after one crime? No one could answer. No one could solve it. The ghost remained a mystery. The city had moved on. But the wound never healed. The killer was still out there. Somewhere. Maybe alive. Maybe dead. Maybe walking past you on the street. And until the day someone solved it, the ghost of Newark would remain one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries of American true crime. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones we see. They're the ones who vanish. The murder of Wendy Wolin faded from the headlines. But it never faded from memory. The ghost still haunted Newark. Not with his presence, but with his absence. Because sometimes silence screams louder than words. Newark in the years after Wendy's death felt different. Shadows seemed darker. Alleys felt longer. Crowds felt thinner. People still spoke of him. Not often. Not loudly. But in whispers. The ghost could be anywhere. The ghost could be watching. The ghost could be next. The city wore its fear like a second skin. For Wendy's family, life split in two. Before the murder. After the murder. Her parents carried grief like bricks on their shoulders. Each day heavier than the last. Each night filled with nightmares. They looked at her empty bedroom. The small shoes she never grew out of. The toys that gathered dust. The silence of the house crushed them. Her mother said she could still hear Wendy's voice. Soft. Laughter in the halls. But only in dreams. And waking up felt like losing her all over again. Her father refused to accept the silence. He demanded justice. He called detectives constantly. He showed up at the precinct. He asked for updates. But there were no updates. Only cold files. Only dead ends. Only apologies. Apologies didn't matter. His daughter was gone. Her killer was free. He felt betrayed. By the city. By the police. By fate itself. He swore he'd never forgive. And he never did. The men who worked the case grew old. Gray hair. Tired eyes. The ghost had aged them. They admitted the truth in private. They would never solve it. Too much time had passed. Too many mistakes had been made. Some retired with guilt still written on their faces. Some carried the file home like a burden. One even kept Wendy's photo in his wallet. The ghost wasn't just haunting a family. He was haunting an entire police department. Every now and then, tips surfaced. A strange man in another state. A prison inmate bragging. A neighbor who acted odd. Detectives checked them all. None panned out. Every road led nowhere. And with each dead end, hope dimmed further. The silence of the ghost grew louder. Kids in Newark grew up with the story. They heard it on street corners. They whispered it at sleepovers. They dared each other to walk near the scene. Some were too young to remember Wendy, but they remembered the fear. Parents used her story like a warning. Stay close. Don't talk to strangers. Don't walk home alone. Wendy became a symbol, not of childhood, but of danger. What about the ghost? What was he doing during these years of silence? Detectives had theories. Maybe he was dead. Maybe he was locked up for another crime. Maybe he had moved far away. But another theory was darker. Maybe he was still there, living quietly, blending in. A man who smiled at neighbors. A man who bought groceries. A man who hid in plain sight. That theory chilled people most, because it meant the ghost wasn't gone. He was right beside them. The crime scene itself changed. The block where Wendy died carried a strange weight. People crossed the street to avoid walking there. Shops nearby lost business. Some closed. The air felt heavy. It wasn't just geography. It was memory. That street would always belong to the ghost. Years later, police labeled it officially a cold case. Files boxed up, stored in cabinets, evidence sealed. But cold didn't mean forgotten. Not to the family. Not to the detectives who still cared. And not to the city that remembered. Every anniversary, reporters called. They asked the same questions. They ran the same stories. Who killed Wendy Wolin? Why was he never caught? But no one could answer. The silence always returned. One year, a journalist dug deeper. He found new witnesses. He wrote a long story. The story sparked anger again. But the ghost remained just that, a ghost. By the 1980s and 1990s, crime-solving changed. DNA testing emerged. Databases grew. Science advanced. But Wendy's case was from another time. The evidence was old, contaminated, lost in chaos. No fingerprints, no DNA, no weapon, nothing left to test, nothing left to scan. Technology had caught up, but the case couldn't follow. The ghost stayed silent. One detective, though, never let it go. Frank. He kept files in his basement. He read them late at night. He replayed every detail in his head. His wife begged him to stop. It was killing him. It was an obsession. But Frank couldn't let go. He believed the answer was still there, hidden, buried in the noise. He believed one day someone would talk, and the ghost would finally have a name. Meanwhile, the Wolins tried to live. They tried to smile again. They tried to move forward. But grief doesn't end. It only changes shape. Holidays felt empty. Birthdays felt cruel. Her classmates grew up. She didn't. Her parents carried that pain every day. And every day felt like a betrayal to Wendy, because she deserved justice, but never got it. By the 2000s, most people had forgotten. New crimes dominated the news. New tragedies stole attention. But in Newark, the memory lingered. The ghost's shadow stretched long. Old-timers remembered. They told the story to younger generations. A story of fear. A story of silence. And always the same question followed. Why was he never caught? The ghost had killed once. And in that one act, he had scarred a city. His silence wasn't weakness. It was power. The power to disappear. The power to control fear. The power to haunt decades without a word. He wasn't in prison. He wasn't punished. He wasn't named. He was free. And freedom gave him immortality. By the time decades had passed, hope was faint. The Wolins still grieved. Detectives still wondered. The city still whispered. But the ghost? He never spoke. Never revealed himself. Never faced justice. And that silence may have been his greatest weapon. Because sometimes, silence is more terrifying than screams. Silence means power. Silence means control. And silence means the ghost of Newark was still out there, somewhere. Decades have passed. But the ghost of Newark is still here. Not in flesh, not in name, but in legend. The story of Wendy Wolin never died. It still breathes. It still claws at memory. It still waits for answers. Because some murders don't fade. Some live forever. Police still call it a cold case. But cold doesn't mean forgotten. The file sits in archives. Yellowed papers. Faded ink. Photos that hurt to look at. Detectives who never knew Wendy now study the file. Younger. Sharper. Determined. They ask the same question their fathers once asked. Who killed her? But the answer remains hidden. In the 2000s and 2010s, hope sparked again. DNA solved cases thought impossible. Killers unmasked decades later. Justice found in dusty evidence. Families of victims cheered. Cold cases cracked wide open. But not Wendy's. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no weapon. Her case was trapped in a time before technology. And that made the ghost untouchable. For her family, time didn't soften the wound. It deepened it. Every year they marked her birthday. Every year they imagined the woman she'd have become. Would she have had children, career, a family of her own? Instead, she remained frozen at 7 years old. Forever a little girl, forever robbed. Her mother once said, "It's not just the death, it's the silence after. The silence kills you twice." In Newark, people still whisper her name, Wendy. For some, it's a ghost story. For others, a warning. For the few who remember her smile, it's heartbreak. Parents still tell their children, "Stay close. Don't walk alone. Don't trust strangers." Her murder became part of the city's DNA. Permanent scar. And what of the ghost? Did he die in silence? Was he caught for another crime? Was he living quietly, an old man blending into society? Detectives debated endlessly, but no one knew. No one will ever know. That was his greatest trick. Not the stabbing, not the escape, but the vanishing. He became faceless, nameless, a shadow that slipped through history. One detective who had worked the case in his youth gave an interview before he died. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. He said, "I'll go to my grave never knowing who did it. And that hurts more than I can explain. But I hope someday someone tells the truth, even if it's too late for justice." He died still waiting. The Wolins pleaded for answers. Even late in life, Wendy's parents begged for someone to speak. A witness, a neighbor, even the killer himself. But silence answered back. And silence became their companion. Some ask, why does this story still matter? Why care about a murder from decades ago? The answer is simple. Because Wendy mattered. Because children deserve safety. Because justice delayed is justice denied. Her case is more than a file. It's a warning. It's a reminder. It's a demand that we don't forget. Today, when people speak of unsolved crimes, Wendy's name sometimes appears. True crime forums, podcasts, books, YouTube videos like this one. Strangers who never knew her still care, still ask questions, still demand answers. Because even now, the ghost terrifies. Not just because of what he did, but because of what he got away with. Think about it. The ghost stabbed a child in broad daylight, on a busy street, with witnesses all around, and he walked away, untouched, unidentified, unpunished. If he could do that once, what else could he have done? What else might he have done? That is the most chilling thought of all. Serial killers crave attention. They taunt. They write letters. They boast. But the ghost? He said nothing. Not a word. That silence is what makes him different. That silence is what makes him terrifying. Because silence means control. And control means power. He didn't need to speak. He didn't need to brag. He let the city do the talking for him. He let fear spread his name. And it worked. Most stories end with an arrest, with a confession, with closure. But not this one. This story never ended. It froze in time. A little girl's life stolen. Killer who vanished. A city that never healed. The ending was silence. And silence is worse than death. Today, more than 40 years later, Wendy's case still lingers. In news clippings, in old police files, in the memories of those who loved her. The ghost is likely gone, buried somewhere, a grave with no justice. But even if his body rots in the dirt, his shadow still walks Newark streets. Because unsolved murders don't die. They live on. They live in fear. They live in whispers. And they live in us. And so we end here, not with answers, but with questions. Who was the ghost of Newark? Why did he kill Wendy? Why did he never strike again? Or did he? Could he have killed others? Could his crimes be hiding under different names? Different cases? Different times? We may never know. But one thing is certain, Wendy Wolin's story will never be forgotten. Not by her family, not by Newark, and not by anyone who hears it. Because some crimes are bigger than the killer. Some crimes belong to history, and some crimes haunt forever. This is not just a case. It's a wound. It's a ghost story. It's a reminder of innocence lost. The ghost of Newark may never be unmasked, but Wendy's memory will live. And maybe that's the justice left to us. Not in a courtroom, not in a prison, but in memory, in story, in truth. Because remembering is resistance. Remembering is justice of its own. And as long as we remember, the ghost never truly wins. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.